Thank you everyone for coming. Welcome. I'd like to open up this session by welcoming you and beginning with a land acknowledgement. As we gather here for these crucial discussions on ending homelessness in our communities, I wish to begin by bringing you greetings and a land acknowledgement from my home community, which is St. Thomas Elgin, located in southwestern Ontario. My home community is located on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lunapawak, and Attawandaron people. This land, marked by agreements including the Treaty 3 between the Lakes Treaty, Treaty 6, the 1836 St. Thomas Treaty, and the London Treaty, has been home to many Indigenous nations and a site of meeting, exchange, and support for many years. These treaties are the enduring presence of the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nations. They remind us of our ongoing responsibilities and the importance of living in respect with the land and with each other. They are not just the historical documents, but living agreements that are meant to guide how we share and care for the land and its people. In our work to end homelessness and to enhance housing stability, we draw inspiration from the resilience, stewardship, and deep connection to the community that these nations represent. Their living traditions and cultures enrich our community and guide us towards a more inclusive and compassionate society. This acknowledgement is more than a formality. It is a reminder to us of our commitment to recognize, respect, and learn from Indigenous people, and that our work in creating and sustaining just and equitable communities is interconnected with the principles of reconciliation, respect for the land, and recognition of the rights and dignity of Indigenous people. As we embark on today's discussion, let us carry with us a spirit of humility, openness, respect, and harmony with the land and with each other. Welcome again to this morning's session, which focuses on collaborative approaches to encampment responses, including strategies, solutions, and success stories. My name is Danielle. I'm the Manager of Housing Stability Services for St. Thomas Elgin, and I have the privilege of being your moderator this morning. As your moderator, I also have the privilege of introducing you to today's presenters. First, I'd like to introduce you to Erin Mifflin and Leslie Moreau from the Regional Municipality of Peel. Erin. Yes. Erin is an advisor of housing innovation and program design at Peel Region. She holds an honors BA from Western University, an MA from McMaster University, and a master's certificate in municipal leadership from the Schulich School of Business at York University. Erin has worked in the housing and homelessness sector for over 20 years. Throughout Erin's career, she has had the privilege of working on strategic policy and planning for housing and homelessness systems, program design and development, housing funding and risk management, housing boards, community housing operations, tenancy management, community development, and affordable housing development. Leslie is the manager in housing services for the region of Peel. Leslie has worked in housing and homelessness for approximately 20 years and currently leads homelessness service delivery, including shelters, street outreach, reaching home, and housing case management. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Kim Crew and Renee Geniole. Did I get it right? Yeah. Excellent. From Chatham-Kent, my neighboring municipality. Yeah, round of applause. Welcome. Kim is the program manager of homelessness with housing services in the municipality of Chatham-Kent. She has been with the municipality for approximately 20 years and has been focused on housing and homelessness for the past 5 years. Together with her team, Kim manages the local emergency shelters, supportive housing caseload, and shelter solution programs, which attempts to keep individuals and families out of homelessness. Renee is the executive director and has been the lead for Reach Out Chatham-Kent for 5 years, a grassroots organization built from the ground up in that time. RUH provides person-centered outreach and drop-in services that work directly with those experiencing homelessness, with intersecting mental health and substance use concerns. RUH's biggest successes are attributed to their peer work, recognizing and honoring that people with lived and living experience are the most important people at the table, which influence them to shift all programming to reflect those voices. In this session, our presenters will be sharing with us some examples of how their respective communities are collaborating across sectors to reshape systems and policies in order to more effectively meet the needs of people living in encampments and with their neighbors. And so I would now like to turn it over to Erin and Leslie to kick us off.
Morning, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm not as tall as Sean Fraser, but I'm always cognizant of the height difference. And I apologize, I'm going to have to read off my slides. It's not how I normally like to present, but so that you can see we do have a presentation. It does exist, I promise you. So our presentation from Peel is how to meaningfully respond to homeless encampments in a two-tier municipality. I'm just curious, how many municipal staff are in the room today? Okay, good, because we were thinking of you when we wrote this presentation. Responding to encampments is incredibly complex on any given day, but when you're working in a two-tier municipalities where services are split between the regional government and the local municipal government, it makes it even more difficult. So our agenda, we're going to introduce you a bit to Peel. We're setting the context. What does housing and homelessness look like in our region? Our journey towards developing an encampment response, which includes a policy framework and joint protocols that the region will follow, as well as its local municipalities. Key elements from our work. I'm really hoping we get visuals in time for that. Examples on how we are reducing street homelessness, because let's not forget, although we're putting a lot of time and energy into responses today, our eye is always on the prize, is helping people move out of encampments into permanent, sustainable housing that makes sense for them, and then sharing our next steps and final thoughts for the future. Our talk today, I'm cognizant, is really process heavy, but that's on purpose. We talk to a lot of people in different municipalities. We've done a lot of work, and there's a real thirst for knowing what other people are doing. So we're going to share with you what we're doing. What is our process? How did we get here? We don't have all the answers, but if we can help folks in the room a little bit with our trials and tribulations, then Leslie and I will be really happy about that. It's our version of a roadmap to create an encampment response within our two tiers. And we also want to share with you some of the areas of hope that we have. So this is a graphic showing the region of Peel. Yes. Oh yes, that's true. Actually, if you want to follow along on the slides on your phones, it's there. Well done, Rian. Thank you. So we have over 1.5 million people and over 175,000 businesses. It's growing steadily. We do have a mix of urban and rural, but it's. You have good news for me? Yes. Better? Okay. You guys can't see it, but the slide is now bigger. I feel for you. So Peel is diverse. We are home to more than 90 distinct ethnic groups. Besides English, we have a lot of spoken languages in Peel. I won't go through them all, but just suffice to say, as I'm sure you may be aware, we are quite diverse. Cool. Our population in Peel by birthplace is also quite diverse. Less than half of Peel residents were born in Canada, 43%. And the rest come from mainly Asia and Europe, Americas, and Africa. I just wanted to talk to a little bit about a two-tier government and what does that mean. So as I said, we're two-tier, so the region of Peel is more on the human services side. We work with community agencies. We focus on the needs of the most vulnerable residents, but there's also services offered at the local municipal level between the cities of Mississauga, Brampton, the town of Caledon. Perhaps some of you heard that Peel Region was on track to dissolve, and that was a whole big saga for us, but now we're back in business. Human services won't be dissolving, so we're able to continue on with this important work and plan for the long term. This slide is talking about regional versus local services. I won't go through it, but just so that you know, the regional's focus is more about dealing with services, offering services and programs. And on the housing side, that would be housing and homelessness programs for people who can't afford to participate on their own in the private market necessarily. Our affordable housing system is focused on the client. And we have a number of different services that the Region of Peel provides to support clients throughout the system. And I'm just going to go through it quickly now a little bit, just to give you the context that the encampment work that the region is leading is one small slice of the overall pie of housing and homelessness that we're working on. But we're able to bring that systems approach to help meaningfully plan and move people with the appropriate supports through our housing system to create sustainable solutions. And that's really, really important. And sometimes it's lost in the shuffle. These things take time, but it's really important to think about that. So we oversee the affordable housing system. We have 10-year housing and homelessness plans that we have to update. We're going to be talking, Leslie's going to be talking to you a little bit about that in a minute. We are advocating to provincial and federal levels of government for funding, and we help our community housing providers because that is a deeply affordable source of housing in our community that needs to be preserved because it's not getting replaced at the level at which it was built many years ago, as Sean Fraser said this morning, for decades. I was waiting for him to say, and we're going to fix it now, but he didn't. So just to give you a sense of that, last year we funded 60% of all our operating costs for community housing and elsewhere, and we fund the majority of our capital plan, which is $1.5 billion. We produce new housing. We give incentives to other providers in the community to also provide housing. We do emergency, transitional, and community housing as well ourselves. We're the sole shareholder of Peel Housing Corporation, which is our biggest landlord of affordable housing in Peel. And we provide service such as street outreach, which is our teams that provide services to people experiencing street homelessness. We offer portable subsidies, lots of other stuff. But I'm going to turn it over to Leslie now to take you through the next bit.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, everyone. So a little bit about affordability in Peel, which won't be probably much different from anywhere else across the country. But an average household in Peel needs to save for about 30 years for an affordable 25-year mortgage. A minimum wage household needs to save for 50. Average rents right now in Peel are 102% of the after-tax minimum wage income. And last year in our shelters, we served over 6,000 people in Peel accessing emergency shelter. We did create, as the service manager for Peel, a 10-year housing and homelessness plan, and it's built on 5 pillars. Transforming our service to help more people get and keep housing that they can afford, building more community housing ourselves, maximizing our planning tools and incentives to help other people build, optimizing our existing stock, so that's state of good repair, but that's also accessing the private market through portable subsidies, and then increasing supportive housing. So our 10-year housing and homelessness plan goes to 2028, and we're refreshing it this year. Won't change that much. We've been really working the plan for the past several years. So we also have and are responsible for homelessness programs in Peel. We have a street outreach team. And we contract with the Canadian Mental Health Association for Peel Dufferin to run that for us. We have a street helpline that's available 24/7, 365 days a year. And we have mobile and place-based outreach teams that provide 12 hours of service a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. In addition, we have 7 emergency shelters for all different demographics, as well as a medical shelter. We focus on diversion and client-centered responses, and we right now have 2 dedicated hotels for overflow in our shelter system. As I said, we served 6,007 clients last year in emergency shelter or overflow hotel, and that was an increase of almost 2,000 clients from the year before. Our by name list also saw substantial growth in last year, where we're up to, say, about 50, just over 1,500 people on at the end of last year on our by name list. Last year in the GTHA, several of us experienced a sharp, unprecedented increase in asylum claimants to our area. By the end of last year, asylum claimants actually represented more than 70% of our shelter system. We served over 2,000, well, just under 2,000 households, asylum claimant households, last year in our emergency shelter system. And our shelter occupancy grew to over 300%, and it really almost collapsed our system. I'm happy to say that as of the end of the month, as of the end of September, we have fully separated the asylum claimant response from our local homeless shelter system, and we have two distinct systems in Peel Region now, allowing us to regain sort of, effective service for the local homeless individuals in Peel. We've also seen an increase in street homelessness. In 2023, Outreach recorded 258 encampment locations, and they served over 1,800 non-unique individuals in 2023. So far in 2024, we've already recorded 194 encampment locations, and we've supported double the amount of non-unique individuals, 3,800. I'm going to pass it back to Erin. We're going to start to talk about the encampment work now.
Now we're going to get into the real meat and potatoes, now that you know a little bit of context about Peel and the environment in which we operate. So these are our lovely encampment response members here. You can see they're very vibrant. So there's a bunch of us, if you're following along on your phones, organizations across our region who are working together to figure out how to best respond to the needs of encampment residents, also the needs of residents in the surrounding communities. We are trying to create a balanced, coordinated approach. If you ask someone what a balanced approach is, it's going to depend on their perspective, but we all know that it has to be centered on human rights and people living in encampments. Their needs eclipse those of all others. So we've been to Regional Council twice since we started the work in April. And have always been very clear that this work is about an encampment response. It doesn't mean that we're getting rid of all encampments in the region. It also doesn't mean that we're letting all encampments go wherever they wish to be, but we're also not going to contravene any rulings that the courts have made. So it is a middle of the road approach, but first and foremost, we're here to support residents in encampments. So our goals, we're working together to create, as I said earlier, a policy framework to guide our actions, joint protocols that will give partners specific directions on how to carry out the work of responding to encampment clients and mapping out who does what. And again, in a two-tier, it gets really complex because, and I'm going to get to this in a little bit, but so the region's providing services to encampment residents, but most of the encampments are on properties that are owned by the local municipalities who aren't in the business of providing service. So they're in parks. And so you have municipal staff who don't have the social services training, et cetera, et cetera. So this is the kind of stuff that we're doing together. And the goals have been endorsed by our council, they're agreed upon by our working group, and approved by our steering committee. And when we first came together, it was great. Everyone had a lot of different opinions, but as we've continued to work through the summer and people understand and have more respect for where we're coming from, we are getting consensus and we are moving the work forward. So it's amazing how definitions of things can really slow your work. And we have incredible pressure to just like, let's go, like this should have been done like yesterday. So We thought we would try and keep our definition to what the Federal Housing Advocate is using, which is a growing number of people in Canada are having to live in tents or informal shelters to survive due to a lack of affordable housing, limited support and services, and nowhere safe to go. These outdoor tents and informal shelters are called homeless encampments. As you know, when you're working on a project, you have to decide the main reasons for which you're doing it, and scope creep can hijack your attempts at getting things meaningfully done. So the outcomes that our working group came up with are really important, and we revisit these outcomes almost every time we meet as a group, just to keep ourselves focused and with an eye on where we're headed. And it's really, really important. It's getting harder now as we're getting to the harder decisions and we're actually doing things that are impacting people. So we are definitely focused on a coordinated response. The human rights focus with a balanced approach is important. We want more advocacy and education about housing. We want better service for encampment residents. We are committed to ongoing monitoring and information sharing. That is a huge one right there, but we're already have made considerable progress in getting better at that. And evidence-based decision-making. So no matter what happens when we have an encampment, we need to have data and evidence before we make decisions, which is really, really important. So these outcomes are not just lip service, and it's important that we hold firm to them with more and more pressures for this group to solve street homelessness. So our governance structure is hopefully fairly easy for folks. So we have a working group that meets regularly in the summer. We were meeting bi-weekly, which is a heavy lift for people to do when there was already many other things that they're already supposed to be doing. So we were meeting quite regularly to work through a lot of the elements of the response. And then our steering committee, which is made up of senior leadership of the working group members, we would take decisions to them and get their direction and advice on next steps. And it's working really well. A big early win for our group was weekly updates, which is a heavy lift for the people who are regularly providing that information week after week after week after week after week. But it helps us all get on the same page and remember, like, there's so many different organizations, and when you think about political escalations, those escalations are not just going to the region, or they're not just going to the local municipalities, they're going like everywhere. So it's really important for us to try and consistently have a unified front and figure out how to best respond. And one way we can do that is through our weekly updates with consistent messages, with up-to-date statistics. People have a few bullet points about what each partner is doing, how we continue to respond. If there's issues that are coming up in the news on a daily, if not weekly basis, we're providing members with tidbits of things just so that they're up to speed. It's been well received. We highlight time-sensitive risks. In this pressure cooker environment, the weekly updates help galvanize our group together and remind us of where we're headed. If you're looking at the slide deck, you can see we have a lot of deliverables. Remember, we had 6 outcomes, and we probably started with like 10 deliverables, and now it's 20, and pretty soon it's going to be 30. But so the scope creep thing is definitely, and oh, well, this isn't working, so you need to try 10 other things because I still have angry residents that, you know, feel like you guys are doing nothing. So you have to be deliberate in your course of action and make sure that your deliverables are feeding into your ultimate outcomes, which again is to develop an encampment response. It's not to solve street homelessness. We're still trying to do that. Like, we have the system stuff that we're showing you, but this is how to meaningfully respond to residents. So our processes and deliverables have to be grounded in evidence. They have to be practical. We have to be accountable. We have to respect the privacy. So this is what we're trying to do. I want to spend a bit of time on this slide. Hopefully you can see it. One of the things that we wanted to establish early on is the legal complexities around encampments, I don't need to tell you, is really intense. And so with legal support from our legal staff, they developed a chart for our group around how to treat encampments and how that is impacted by where they are. When we first started, we thought, okay, public, private, easy, right? No, actually, it's not easy. So when you have public land for a public purpose, for example, a park, the custodian would be a regional or municipal government, and then there's legislation and implications for encampments around the Trespass Act, the charter and bylaws. When you have public land that is for more of a private purpose, like a parking lot, that makes things a little more gray, but you're still adhering to the same legislation. If you have a non-municipal entity who is of public nature, and there's a municipal management agreement, like with a conservation agency, then there's other agreements that come into play and can make things more complex. There's privately owned land, but with a public purpose. For example, if a municipality is overseeing hydrolands, and there's a lease agreement with the private entity providing control to the municipality. There's non-municipal entity, but for a public purpose, but it's a non-municipal purpose. Are you still with me? Like, there's so many nuances to this. Thank you, Steve. Like a schoolyard, like Metrolinx transit stations, that is slightly different nuances and well. And there's a role for municipalities to provide support to encampment residents, but the land rights holder will determine the response. And then there's private, like we've been using Walmart as our example in our working group meetings. The charter doesn't apply, but we still want to be able to support residents who are living on that land. So you have to get into this level of detail when you're trying to figure out how you're going to respond to the encampment on the land. And the landowner is really important, and the purpose of the land is really important, and the custodian of the land is important. So we're really hoping this chart will help you. And then the next slide is talking about roles, and this is very, very important as well. One of the things we did was map the encampment process from start to finish and define who's doing what. So you really need that role clarity and establish consensus on what your role actually is or is not. No one really wants to own an encampment, but someone is responsible for it, and many people are accountable for it. So we have the custodian, which was our term for the person who's overseeing the land. There's the encampment lead, the encampment response team, so who's supporting, who's coordinating, the partners who are all collaborating, the coordinator centralizing everything. So we have mapped out through roles who is doing what for all those things, who's providing supports. We're not there yet. We haven't figured out all the answer, but this is especially important, again, in a two-tier where we're not all rooting for the same team. Like, we have different bosses who might have different priorities and different ways of making decisions, tracking information, how to respond to risk. So we have to, this role clarity is really, 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 really important for us. To also help frame this work, we created a policy framework, which is the high-level sort of buckets of work and the high-level guidance that are informing our protocols and work instructions for the encampment response team. I won't read out all the areas, but suffice to say that, again, it's helping us provide more information to make good decisions about how the work is actually going to be rolled out on the ground, and we are continually going back and making changes before we finish with the final policy. Because encampments are so politically charged, it brought a lot of pressure on us to produce a policy quickly. I'm going to say a few weeks. So again, those municipal staff, like maybe you've been in this situation where you have to like develop a policy in like a week, then you get feedback in a week, and then you present it, and like it's very, very stressful, and you worry about doing good work when you're on a timetable like that. But we are able to make changes because the work is iterative and ongoing. Leslie.
Awesome. I'm going to bring us home now. Just going to provide a little bit more detail about some of the tools we've created that is really helping us on the ground. We have created three tools: an identification form, a site assessment to be used at encampment sites, and then a needs assessment for the residents of the encampment. The purpose of creating them is really to gather consistent information. It is a tool that helps us with coordination and collaboration. It also helps inform recommendations that we may make as the encampment response team to the custodian of the land on whether an encampment should remain, be relocated, or removed in some situations. It supports service provision, and it supports the surrounding community around where the encampments are. So the first one is an identification form, and it's got very little information. It's not intended to be onerous. It's short and sweet. It's something that call center staff could fill out with somebody calling in to report a encampment, and just gathers some consistent centralized information through an electronic form. And in the future state, we expect a regional coordinator will download that form at several times throughout the day and take appropriate action to disseminate it amongst our partners for further work. We also have a site assessment. The site assessment purpose is to document observations and hazards in each encampment. And it really brings consistency to the information that we're gathering. And we're practicing those site assessments now and trying to level set amongst the different people and the different teams that will be visiting encampments. What certain things mean when you complete the form. There are action items that come out of that site assessment, so we're not waiting, but we are working to reduce any health and safety risks that we see when we go to encampments, and we're keeping a record of that too, because it's in that record keeping that we can show the due diligence that we've done at a site. It will help us to craft recommendations, and the majority of people that do this actually work at the city level for, in parks, security, fire services, and other first responders. We played with the language of this one. We talked about it as a risk assessment at first, a health and safety assessment, and finally we've landed on a site assessment because language is important. And so with feedback from those with lived experience, we've landed on a site assessment. We're also using a risk matrix in the site assessment where we look at the probability of a risk happening and then what would the impact be if it did happen. And we're coming up with a score right now, and that leads us to low, medium, and high risk encampment areas. Fire services were the ones that helped us with this. It's something that they do on a regular basis, so we've adopted that. It also helps us classify some of the encampments as high, as medium, and low risk. We've also created an encampment needs assessment. That's completed by our street outreach team. And it's a data collection tool meant to determine the daily needs, health needs, safety of the people and pets living in the encampment, their willingness to accept housing and social supports. It's not an exhaustive assessment, but it helps us with line of sight into the needs of those encampment residents. The outreach team is working towards completing this every time they visit an encampment so that we continue to add to the story. And it's also important from a privacy perspective that we note that they're assessing the encampment as a whole, and their assessment is less about the individuals in the encampment and about the overall encampment. So they go through people and pet information? Do they have access to the daily needs, water, toilets, showers, food preparation, safety? So they identify if there are sharps or needles, naloxone kits were provided, whether there's broken glass on the ground, and then they follow up with next steps to usually either the local city municipality or fire services to get action on those sites so that they're safer. They go through health needs, and then we gather some information on housing data, whether we're referring clients to the by name list, whether they're accepting offers of shelter, things like that. One of the other things that we changed gears early on was community engagement and consultation. So early on, we were pressured by one of our local councillors to hold like a town hall for some angry residents in the area of an encampment, and you can imagine how that went. We actually got nothing of what we needed from those residents around suggestions. It was just a bunch of anger and trying to, you know, go back and forth that way. So we've changed our process, and we have a couple of live surveys on our website. You can go to our website and see them. One for business owners and one for residents. But we've also just brought on a consultant to convene a citizens table who will provide feedback on our encampment policy and protocols. So an objective third party and not us. So we look forward to more of that. We have been doing some regular consultation and continue to do so ever since we started back in May with those with lived experience, those who move out of encampments, those who remain in encampments still, and so we continue to do that kind of work. Right now, we're knee-deep in protocols, so they give us a little bit more direction to the encampment response teams on how to do the work, and we actually think that in some cases we'll have to do some even deeper work around the day-to-day per municipality, you might say. All that is to say, and like Erin said, none of this work will reduce street homelessness. It's just will help us manage it in a coordinated way. So while we are doing this important work, we are also working to reduce street homelessness. One of the first pillars of our housing and homelessness plan is around transforming our service. And there's an ongoing project to make a difference in the outcomes of those experiencing homelessness. We are really excited to share that we created a needs-based portable subsidy for those experiencing homelessness and those at risk of experiencing homelessness. And to date, we've taken 135 people and growing by about 20 a week, or 20 a month, I should say, to portable subsidies, and we've taken them off the by name list, and they're now housed affordably in the community. And we're presenting on this tomorrow afternoon, some of my colleagues. So if you're interested, new supportive housing units have been created. We're renting hotel rooms when necessary and as our shelters are full. Our medical shelter, our outreach services, some stay the night programs, and the work that we did last year on interprofessional primary care for those experiencing homelessness are all making a difference. Right now, we're also working on some community service hubs for the homeless throughout our region. So that work continues, but it really is separate and apart from the encampment policy and protocol. So our next step is we're trying to finalize our work. We're working on dashboards, measurement plans, website for public-facing information to really help our counselors answer questions and point their residents to. We are preparing a council report that we plan to bring back to council in the spring of 2025 to wrap this up and get approval. It will include a budget request because doing this work is new work and we need new money and new positions to do it. Then the lower tier municipal cities will need to do some bylaw work in their areas and do some amendments, change some of their practices. And then we're going to launch an implementation plan and training for everybody in the and on the encampment response teams. So just some final thoughts. It's a polarizing issue, depending on who you talk to. There's not always a lot of agreement about what we should do. We must try ideas and methods as we go, and we've been doing that. The pressure to respond now while creating this, it's competing. So instead of looking at it as competing, we've just been implementing sort of as we go. Even though we don't have approval yet, we're just trying things. We have no dedicated funds for this work, so we really are truly doing it off the side of our desk. It's challenging to advance the work while also responding to concerns. There's extreme pressures to complete it yesterday. And not only that, but solve the crisis as we do it. And no one wants to own the problem. So thanks so much today for your time.
Thank you very much. We're going to turn it over to Chatham-Kent to hear about some of the great work that's happening in their community. We have reserved time for question and answer, so we'll just ask that you hold until after this presentation.
Morning. Can you hear me at the back? Good, thank you. Morning, everyone. As Danielle mentioned, my name is Kim Crew. I am the Program Manager of Homelessness with Chatham-Kent, the Municipality of Chatham-Kent. I'm here with my partner, Renee. Renee is the Executive Director of RUH1, which is a local grassroots organization she'll tell you a little bit more about. We are here today to talk about building partnerships in response to encampments. First, want to give you a little bit of context about the community that we're from. So Chatham-Kent is a community in between Windsor and London on the 401 corridor. We have a population of about 105,000 people, which is enough, but our geographic region is just about 2,500 square feet. So we have a lot of ground to cover. Our funding and kilometers. What did I say? Feet? Square feet. Obviously that's wrong. Kilometers. So that's important to note. The funding that we get and the programming that we do is based on population, but geographically it takes a lot of work for us to hit every corner of our municipality and to provide services for everybody. Our biggest community is Chatham within our municipality, and Chatham has about 50 to 60,000 people. The rest of the communities are very rural and smaller in nature. To give you an idea of what our homelessness looks like, much different from Peel, we have been increasing in homelessness, as I'm assuming everybody else has, since about November of 2022. Right now, we're sitting at about 215 people on our by names list. This is the highest that we've ever been, and the trajectory is on the upscale. So we anticipate that this number is just going to continue to rise. Of those 215 people that are on our by names list that we know of that are homeless, now we're creeping up to 60% are chronic. So that number as well keeps going up and up and up. And you can see the people that we're seeing are getting further entrenched into homelessness. We always have about 14 or 15 youth, so individuals 16 to 24, and we hover usually around about 10 seniors, so 65 or over, that are within our homeless numbers. 34 individuals of our by names list have declared to be Indigenous.
Morning, everybody. Just to reiterate a bit of what Kim has mentioned about our community before I start talking about RUH, I don't know how many of you are from big city versus rural. We are very, very rural. So imagine in the last year to 2 years, this is our first experience with large outdoor encampments. This was a community of, so Chatham has what, 40,000 people. 50. Some of our towns have 4,000, tiny little towns. I grew up in a tiny little, you grew up in an even tinier little town of hundreds of people. So this is our first experience. I'm telling you, we watched this Peel slideshow and we're stealing a lot of it because this is new to us. This is huge in that we're learning, as you guys were talking about, let's not reinvent the wheel, sharing information, doing what we can to respond to this. So this year is our first actual, and Kim will talk about it a bit later on in the presentation, of a visible outdoor encampment where finally everybody in our community went, oh, what? There's really people living outdoors? Yes, there is. We at RUH have been following them around for 5 years, but we're talking 1 or 2 tents in a bush somewhere over there. We knew where they were. Nobody else did. Now we're talking about multitudes of tents and 40, 50, 60 people living in one area. So I just wanted to kind of stress the fact that you're getting both ends of the spectrum here. You're getting the large cities and the little tiny rural places. So to talk about a bit about RUH, about 5 years ago we started up. I always call this our origin story. Our co-founders were working at our very first overnight men's shelter, and this was something with 10 beds. It was a tiny little church project. But recognizing that there was people that still weren't coming in to access services, and there was curiosity as to why. So grabbing up a handful of lunches and going downtown in Chatham, which is our biggest rural center, finding that many people, beginning conversations. Fast forward to today, RUH is dual-pronged in that we have outreach and drop-in centers in Chatham and Wallaceburg, our 2 largest centers. But we've blown up because of the response to people experiencing houselessness. Outreach numbers are quite incredible, actually, for our tiny little town. We serve about 1,000 people weekly. That is non-unique individuals, just an FYI. And our drop-in centers run anywhere from 30 to 60 people a day. We started to build partnerships, and that's why we're all here today to hear about that. But now our program is based mainly on partnerships with the municipality. We're doing pilot programs left and right. You'll see them all on this slide. And that's what we do. So we are the grassroots nonprofit end of the spectrum in Chatham-Kent, trying to figure out what we're doing. Oh, you can talk to it.
So how our partnership started, rocky, pun intended. If the slide was up, you'd think that was funny. So really when we got started with this work, we had 2 kind of different organizations, 2 different mission statements. We had us from the municipality, very best practice, evidence-based government type work. We had RUH, who was outreach, very on the ground, hearing from the exact people that were living unhoused or in the encampments on what they needed. And it really took a couple years, a lot of work for our 2 groups to come together and really develop the partnership that we're at right now. So both of our agencies ate a lot of humble pie. We recognized that the voices that the other group was bringing to the table was super important. We had different lenses that we were bringing to the table, different expertise. Recognizing that those with lived experience are the most important voice at the table, no matter what you're talking about. If it's about homelessness and if it's about encampments, you need the voice of the people that are living on the streets in order to inform practices and programs. It took both of our agencies dedicated time to recognize that we do have the same common goal. We are trying to help those folks that are living on the streets and living without homes to reduce the harm that they're experiencing down there. Do you have anything you want to add on that slide?
No, other than we were the Wild West and they were the government. Trying to jam those 2 things together is not easy. But Kim's right. It's getting out of our silos and recognizing that there is a spectrum from here to here, and who helps who. and I did forget to mention when we talk about rock, there is something that I will lecture on until I'm blue in the face, is that we create all of our programming and really learned along the way through some great grants that we were able to establish that people with lived and living expertise have to be at the table. All of our programming, all of our, anything we do as an organization is peer-led. And that's absolutely vital, absolutely vital.
And we've really taken that philosophy and kept it in with our municipal work. So when we're talking about programs and funding and what the community needs, we will always engage ROC to talk to our lived experience and to talk to the folks that are experiencing homelessness to get their vote and their say.
So we kind of talked about this already, but our mandate is to build relationships and build trust. That's the only way we can bring our peers to the table, but it's the only way that we can also sit at the table and have and learn and grow and experience. What we're learning that individuals need, and our associates at Peel talked about that a lot, is that basic needs being met, the healthcare issues, supportive wraparound services. What we find in our community, and I'm sure it's pretty equal across all tables, is that houselessness doesn't normally go by itself. There's always intersecting concerns. There's always the opioid, I guess we're leaning away from the term opioid crisis. I haven't heard the new term for that yet. But substance use, mental health concerns, especially with after effects of COVID, are extraordinary. So they are also affecting all our little small towns too. It's not just big city problem anymore, right? So
our current reality in Chatham-Kent, we gave you the numbers of how many are homeless. Why are we here, and why is encampment such a hot topic? We have about 215 people on our by name list right now. We have about 112 of those living outside. So this is higher than has ever been in Chatham-Kent. We have 2/3 higher visible than we had 2 years ago. So if you can imagine being from a small town and you see one or two individuals that might be on the streets sleeping with a sleeping bag, and that is traumatic. And now we have encampments where we have over hundreds of people outside. And so for our community, it has been hugely eye-opening about the topic that's going on. We do have an emergency housing shelter. We have one for our community. Its capacity is 44 beds, and we are consistently full. So there is a wait list, always, normally. We currently have about 10 encampments in our community. That is a rough number. We know of some very large ones, and Renee's team knows where the other ones are, where there's one or two people or tents sporadic. But we have very significant winter warming concerns coming up. We know we have over 100 people outside. We know that our shelter is already full, and we know that things are going to get worse. So we are working on winter warming plans, but it's a very, very huge concern for us in our community right now. As with most communities across Canada, what we're witnessing is wait lists. We are witnessing lack of supports, growing wait lists, lack of funding, same as what everybody else is. In Chatham-Kent, we have frozen HPP money, which probably there's other folks in the room, which to us that actually means a reduction in services because cost of living has gone up. So we are struggling year to year to fund our programming. So what did we do with the encampments? We knew that there was people sleeping outside. It hadn't grown into a large, huge community issue at this point. But we wanted to get on the bandwagon with everybody else, and so we developed an encampment committee and a protocol, and we thought we were ahead of the game, and we talked with every municipal department that likely was already involved in some kind of encampment. So we talked to police and fire, EMS, we talked to Public Works, the Parks and Recreation Department. We talked with legal, knowing that there was court cases in other communities that we had to think about. We developed a local protocol, keeping in mind that we were going to pivot and change based on what the community needed. We tested it out. We had, one tent over in this community, and our protocol was, let's get ROC involved and we'll go have conversation and it will be wonderful and everything will work out and they will move along, and it was nice. We knew that we had to get the peers involved. We knew that we had to make sure legal was on board with us. And we had a nice little protocol developed, and then we were on our way. And then chaos happened. So if you could see my slide, and if you're following around, we had a large encampment develop in our downtown core. Kind of seemed like it happened overnight. And in the pictures, if you're looking on your phone or if you look later, there's a municipal parking lot in our downtown core that's kind of surrounded by buildings. The one building is a drop-in center for individuals that's open from 10 to 2. They offer a warm meal, a shower, laundry services, so it's kind of a day program. The rest of the buildings surrounding this encampment were local businesses. Local businesses who were not happy that there was individuals camping beside them. The other thing is because the individuals that were staying there kind of wedged themselves in between these buildings, it became a hot box in the summer. So as soon as the temperatures rose, the temperature within that encampment rose, it was hot, hot, hot. The other thing is there was a drain in the middle of the parking lot and the catch basin underneath of it broke. So every time we even got like a millimeter of rain, we had an astronomical flood. Everybody's tents were flooded, the cars couldn't get in, and it was a huge disaster. The other part of that is that the local businesses started to retaliate. And so they were unhappy that there was folks in the parking lot, and they started to take matters into their own hands. And this is when my team and Renee's team really got involved, because it came to the safety of those that were staying in that parking lot. One of the businesses set up a rat alarm in the building that was adjacent. So there was all day long, all night long, a very loud, piercing sound, alarm going off constantly, just to irritate the people that were there. As you can imagine, the people got irritated, and so they were doing everything they could to find the rat alarm, to mute it somehow. It just turned into an unsafe environment, really. And so we got our committee together and thought, how can we fix this? How can we protect the folks that are still living outside, because they truly have nowhere else to go? But also recognizing, like Erin and Leslie said, there is a balance to protecting the community, protecting the neighbors, the downtown core, while balancing the needs of those folks that we are helping. So what did we do? We leaned on RUH1, and we began to have conversations about the safety issues within this encampment. It was a municipal parking lot, so the court order, it wasn't a viable path to, first of all, not that we ever would want to, but it wasn't a viable path to just say, you can't be here anymore. We didn't have any kind of legal authority to do that. But what we did want to do is talk to the folks and let them know that this is not the best place for you. And we really tried to do that from a human-centered approach. We recognized very early on, the folks there are the experts of what they need. They are the experts of what basic needs, what challenges the areas that they're staying in present. And they can really tell us what is best for them in the community. Let you talk about that a little bit.
Oh, sure. So we simply helped them move. To oversimplify it, we had some consultations with municipal folks and said, we need to find a secondary location. But how do we do this? How do we do this with a trauma-informed approach? How do we do this with especially engaging our peers? Because we had also, through some of our fundings in creating a peer program, we actually had contracted some of our people with lived and living expertise that were living in this encampment and in other congregate settings, however you want to call them. So we did one step at a time, one tent at a time, one person at a time, worked with them, because moving, I mean, it's traumatic for all of us at the best of times when we can hire movers and we have our belongings and we have our trucks and our, family members to haul boxes. So imagine taking somebody's life who is so wrapped up in one tent, and belongings are valuable, and you're taking these people that have been trying to survive for days and days in a little hot box. How do we get them moved with the least amount of trauma to them? I can't even tell you, I had one guy that I've known for many years look at me and say, are they going to make us move again? I can't do this again. Not for right now. For right now, you're okay. So we got them to a new location. You'll be able to see those pictures. That location wasn't New neighbors weren't as happy either, but we've done a lot of community engagement to work through that as well. So they are safe. They're in a nice kind of covered area and in a better location. Some of the agreements that we made with the municipality with some extra funding as well is that we provided them with a porta-john. I'm telling you, our biggest success to this date is nobody has tipped over that porta-john, and they've been there for months now. That's a win. That's a win for us, right? Garbage dumpster, to keep the encampment as relatively clean, right? And having those conversations, this is a tough conversation to have someone who lives outdoors to say to them, listen, you guys, we got to keep this stuff cleaned up. We got to keep this looking halfway respectable, because you do have neighbors, right? But to have those conversations with people who, when they get up in the morning, the only thing they're thinking about is where am I eating today and where can I go get a shower, or where can I get my dope? Where can I get my next fix? Where can I, that's survival mode. We don't have in my privilege, I don't have to worry about that stuff, right? So having those conversations was tough, but kind is clear. Or clear is kind, I said it backwards. Clear is kind, right? Having these conversations through our peers, with our peers, to say, okay, we know you guys got to live here. How are we going to make it the best for everybody? So what we've noticed, and my last point there is another brag point for us, is that we've learned that through this peer work and through these open conversations and through lending our expertise as well, is that this encampment has started to self-regulate in that they've kicked out a couple troublemakers. They have a few of our contracted peers who go through and help do the cleanups, or say, hey, you look like you're really struggling. What can I do to help you today? Oh, you need some help getting this stuff to the garbage. You need some help. Let's go find a meal over at Hope Haven, or whatever that looks like. So the self-regulation piece, when we gave to them the ability to have a little bit of pride and consistency in their life, it's working. So far, everybody touch wood for me, please. It's working.
Some of the challenges, and this won't be news to any of you, the court rulings. Obviously, the court rulings play a big part in what municipalities can and can't do as far as response. Our local protocol has been a challenge for us. Like I said, we had it nicely done in a nice little package, but then, a big one happened, and what are we going to do? So we have gone, not back to the drawing board, but we have added a lot more detail to our protocol about how it's actually enforced, who is the owner of the land, all of the kind of stuff that Erin and Leslie talked about in their chart, which we'll be stealing. Enforcement. Chatham-Kent is unique in that we don't actually have bylaw enforcement that can regulate these encampments. So our team for bylaw enforcement is very small, no capacity to do this. Locations. If we start saying that encampments can't be in one spot, they have to be in many spots, then because of our geographic problem, what does that look like when we're trying to coordinate support services? And how is our outreach team possibly going to visit every encampment in our community when they're all over, and it takes an hour and a half to get from one side of our municipality to the other? So we have lots of challenges to work through, but with partnership, we're ready to tackle them all. Some takeaways from us.
Yep. And this as well, for those following along, is again, ask the people. I can't stress that enough to everybody. Taking a human-centered approach, engaging with people. We at RUH do a lot of work on stigma training, or anti-stigma training, whichever way you want to look at it. Because it's so new still to our community, we still get questions like, oh, what if this person in this psychosis is going to freak out on me and stab me 18 times? And, there's a genuine worry for that. That's the media campaigns that come out about the harshness of anybody that uses substances. They're all crazy and they're all going to, go psycho on all of us, right? So we do a lot of that work because genuinely, talk to the people that are living it. But that's my message. That's RUH's mandate. But that peer program has made significant difference in the work that we do. The work is deeper, the work is more intensive, and we accomplish a heck of a lot more just talking to people.
And I will say, Renee asks the people that are living in encampments, and I spend quite a lot of time speaking with the neighbors, the citizens, the business owners, the folks on kind of the other side of the table that don't maybe understand where the folks are coming from and why they're in the predicament that they're at. I will say that the complaint calls, I guess if you want to call them, have really decreased in nature. I spend a lot of time educating the community on what we can and can't do, what the courts say, what the laws say, but really educating them on where these folks are coming from and why there's a lack of supports in our community, and why you're seeing what they do. I have in the past, and with permission, but in the past few months, I've really tried to change the narrative in our community. We often, as housing services, and RUH as well, will get the calls about anything related to anybody homeless is a housing problem. So why is this person not receiving treatment? Why is this person not in the hospital? Why is this person, not working? All of these things turn into a housing problem, and I have really strived to include those partners in conversations. So when someone is talking to me about obvious mental health and addiction concerns, I bring in CMHA to the conversation. Let's bring them to the table. I am not a CMHA expert. I am not a mental health and addictions expert, but we have those in the community, so let's bring them in. And so by doing that, we've created bigger and bigger conversations, and really we have started to see a flip in our community of understanding, not acceptance, but of, understanding. And if we can get one or two more people to understand why these folks are in an encampment and why the supports are lacking in our community, then we might have a better chance of getting some more funding and some more political awareness. This slide is just about, again, how we communicated with folks staying in the encampment and why it's important to have open and ongoing dialogue with the stayers. Their needs change as often as the policies change that we're developing. And so it's really important to keep them at the forefront of every conversation. We have done surveys upon surveys, and Renee's team is really awesome to say, we want to know this information, and they will help us kind of navigate a survey type thing to make sure that it's appropriate questions, and their team will go out and ask the questions that we need to know. And it's been a phenomenal partnership that way. We communicate with businesses and neighbors about the plan as well. We have to make sure that we're on the same page. Our community and the businesses in our downtown are well versed on the fact now that the municipality and RUH are on the same team, and we have the same approach, and we are there to support the folks that are staying in encampments. We'll support the businesses as well. It took a lot of education to explain why we put a porta-john and a dumpster in an encampment that we weren't sanctioning. That doesn't make any sense to business owners. But if you're talking about the people that are there and the dignity of being able to use the facilities instead of going in the grass, and where are you going to throw out your things? All of those basic things. No, we're not sanctioning this encampment, but we want to make it the best for the neighbors and for the people in there as best as we can to mitigate those concerns.
Yeah, and to tell you how kind of new this is to our community as well, we just, in fact, created a BIA. What does BIA stand for? Businesses. It's like the downtown core. What is it? Sorry.
Improvement area.
Thank you. We just created a booklet for them that says, if someone shit on your front stoop, call Public Works. If there's used needles in the alley, call RUH. If there's, right? And to talk about, why language is important and how to approach people that are, or what to do in an opioid poisoning, what to do. Do you have naloxone? Do you want naloxone? So all of those things are so brand new to a lot of our downtown businesses, and we actually were talking about adapting it just to give it out to whoever wants this booklet. Like, that's all new for Chatham-Kent, and imagining my hometown, Blenheim, is a little 4,000 people town, and there was a guy walking around homeless there, and nobody knew what to do. Right? You just don't. I mean, most people would take in somebody back 20 years ago, not now. So those are the kind of new responses that we are learning and working together with all of our community partners. Okay, what information should we put in for your organization? What should we say about this? So that's another example of how new we are to this.
Yep. How do we define success? How do we know our partnership is working? Renee said earlier, it's the small wins. Really, do we have one more person engaging with us today? Do we have one more person that woke up today? Is the Porta-John still standing? All of those things we really take pride in. Buy-in from those in the encampment is huge, and Renee can talk a little bit about that, but the relationship building that her team has done, and not only her team, which I'll let her do, but we've had other municipal departments that have really taken an interest in building relationships that were really not involved in this before. So like our public works team, for example. Picture a bunch of guys in trucks driving around, shoveling, doing road work or whatever, and these trucks now often stop at the encampment to empty the garbages, to shoot the shit, say, how's it going? Our police department, and I know police is big on enforcement, but our police department has just re-implemented a foot patrol, and so they just go walking through. They have assured us that their intent is not to arrest people, it's not to intimidate. They walk through, they chat, they ask how it's going, and it's just really to be a presence there. And so far, again, we're knocking on a lot of wood today, but knock on wood, that relationship building can continue with more municipal departments than just housing. And with everything, we try and use trauma-informed actions. We know that the people that are living in encampments have been traumatized. They're being traumatized as they are right now. So everything that we do, we try and have that lens with us. Last slide is our next steps. We are going back to our local council Monday, actually, with our revised protocol. Council did ask us to come back with some recommendations as far as locations, similar to what other municipalities have done. So in finding the balance with supporting the community, the neighbors, and those experiencing homelessness, we are going back on Monday with some additional recommendations. And then really our next focus is winter warming and how are we going to support the 100 and more folks that are living outside when our resources are maximized. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all of our presenters and partners in Peel and Chatham-Kent. I think whether we're from large or small municipalities, a lot of us can feel your pain and appreciate your efforts and dedication to serve the people who need you the most. So we do have about 10 minutes for question and answer. So I will moderate, take your questions. Our presenters, I think your mics are on so you can answer from the table, or if you want the podium, please come back up and I'm happy to give it to you. So we've got one in the back corner.
I can start. There is a rumor about every month or so that we have busloads being brought in from Toronto. So if Toronto could not send the buses, that would be great. We have tried to dispel this myth a gazillion times in our community. We do a very thorough diversion process with anyone that calls in for our homeless services. So in Chatham-Kent, we're fortunate enough that we're small enough that we can have a homeless response line. We have one phone number for anybody experiencing homelessness, and they call into this one line. Our shelter staff actually answer that call, and we do a very significant diversion process. So our message to the community is we can't prevent people from coming to Chatham-Kent. We will do everything in our power to reunite somebody with their home community or wherever it makes sense that they have the most supports. But if somebody is not from Chatham-Kent, we can't ask them to leave, but they are not eligible for our services unless they want to go back to their home community, in which we'll help them.
Take one from the front.
I'll speak up so the people at the back can hear. I work in Toronto, shelter operator, and I feel that shelter operators for the longest time didn't own the problem. And we now recognize that we're perceived as starting the problem, particularly from politicians who are running up for possible re-election. And they're asking us as shelter operators what we can do to solve the encampment issues. And I feel that some of managing the encampment issue is actually managing the neighborhood issues as opposed to managing the encampment, because some of them are very self-regulated. And what is your best tip for managing the neighborhoods?
Yikes.
I'm not sure if I have any really sound advice, but I can tell you from experience that for me, and maybe Renee can talk more, but for me, it has just been one-on-one conversations. And again, I recognize that I'm fortunate that Chatham-Kent is small enough in nature that we can do that. But we have had, we did community consultations once when we opened our shelter. We're never going to do that again, ever. But having one-on-one conversations with anybody that calls in has been the most productive. I also sit on a number of neighborhood watch groups that have kind of sprung up. And really the biggest part is education, is they don't understand why folks are down there, and they don't understand the backing information about poverty and addiction and supportive housing and all of the factors that play into it. So for me, it's been painfully one-on-one conversations with community members, and then they spread that information to their peers.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, even in a municipality as big as Peel, it's one-on-one conversations with individuals. It's educating because it's visible. When they're in the encampments, it's visible right in their face, but it's actually a very small percentage of those who are homeless in our community. Majority of people are emergency sheltered in our community. So I think that's important too, is putting it in perspective, because the message is always you're not doing anything when we are doing so much. So it's a tough one though, that I think we're all struggling with.
I just want to add one more thing to that. I think it's also important that you recognize to the community that it's not okay with me either. And our message, we don't want people living in encampments. I am not okay with individuals, not having facilities and using the riverbank. I'm not okay with the amount of garbage. And I think recognizing to neighbors that we understand your complaints, we get it. But on the flip side, these are the reasons these people are here. And I think being honest with them that, yep, not okay. We're on your side with that. Makes a big difference, that they don't think it's an us versus them.
I just wanted to add that we've had some success with place-based resources. So we have place-based outreach teams in select hotspots, encampments as well. And when you start establishing trusted relationships with people in the community, and you put a face on poverty, you put a face on homelessness, that enables better understanding. You're not going to get everyone. Just have to acknowledge there's always going to be a segment who doesn't want that, who doesn't care, or they're indifferent, whatever reason, but you can build a lot of bridges with place-based resources.
I'm going to go for the middle, and then I'll come back to the front if that's okay. Yes, please. Oh, maybe, yep, we'll take a question from you, then back to the front, and then I'll come back to you.
Just for Erin, just the front row seat on the whole partisan politics issue around the dissolution of the region. How much of a distraction was that from actually being able to implement this work, that whole process? Because I guess I want people to start thinking about how larger political action is having immediate impact on people's lives.
Yeah, it was really difficult for us to commit to long-term planning when we didn't know what was going to happen in the long term. And there were certain projects like our homeless health work we had to sort of put on the back burner as we were trying to help plan for a divorce, basically, and trying to have conversations with municipal staff who didn't know and rightly shouldn't have known how to take on this work without knowing where we were going, how we were going to support it. It was awful, but we knew the work had to continue, so we didn't want any gaps in service, so we were still trying to continue on, but then plan for this eventual destination at the same time. It was staff were terribly impacted by that. Clients were terribly impacted by that. Our community providers were terribly impacted by that. Peel taxpayers are paying for this circular exercise that happened. It was a thing.
I'm just going to acknowledge that there's only 5 minutes left in the session, and I've committed to 2 questions, our friend at the back and our friend at the front. I will note that in your slides, you do have contact information for all of our presenters. I get the impression they're all very approachable, so if you see them throughout the conference, please engage. But we'll take one more question from, yes, please, yes.
Thank you. Thank you all for your presentation. Fantastic. I'm going to focus on Leslie and Erin. Your encampment strategy. You're a 2-tier government, as we are. I've got 8 mayors. I've got 3 very strong mayors. And within that, you've got the staff. So staff and mayor aren't necessarily on the same page. How do you navigate that with your encampment strategy? We're struggling with that. The mayors are saying, no. The staff are coming out and saying, no, we want this. And it's just been chaos for us. So, I'd like to hear.
So it's difficult, right? But we really, the weekly meetings helped us at the staff level galvanize together and feel like we're part of the same team. And I think that was really helpful. Us recognizing the pressure that they're under by their mayor in their area, and trying to help that while still trying to get the work done has helped us at the staff level. The political level is still really difficult, honestly. Erin?
We're trying to, it's education and awareness, right? This is a huge wicked problem that we're trying to solve, and also gentle reminder that we can't just kick everyone out of encampments and make encampments go away. So we had a legal education session for our steering committee and working group. It was really well received. We are exploring having that workshop for any counselor who wants to attend, to also get an education. And it wasn't just from our regional legal staff, but it was Peel Regional Police. Legal was there as well. If police are willing to take leadership on this conversation, it can take you into a lot of doors that might otherwise be shut. And also how to support the counselors with a process that so they can provide information to their constituents so that we can reassure them of the process, but without creating like a double standard, that because if you create a separate standard for political requests, everyone is going to go political and then you'll never get any work done. So we're still in the phases of working through that, but it definitely is, we know in a 2-tier rate, our municipal partners are getting a lot more in-your-face interference than we do at the region. Like there's just different dynamics. So we're respectful of that dynamic, and we're here to support each other. So again, like the unified front thing is really, really important. But we're happy to talk further offline, Stella. Yeah, 8 mayors, that's a lot.
Thank you.
It's not done.
We have just 2 minutes left of our scheduled workshop, so we'll take your question from the front.
I'm hoping that you can share your forms that you developed and the matrix. Yes. Like some way of sending it to maybe to CAH so that they can share it with the folks that are out there.
Yeah, we'll definitely follow up with that, but our email addresses are also on the bottom of our presentation. Please reach out anytime.
Okay. We're at time. Are you comfortable receiving one more? I think we've got someone who's quite eager.
We're just directly north of Yamden. And like say back here, we have 8 mayors. When you refer to council, do you mean upper tier councilors or lower tier? Because we're finding the conversation changes depending upon who their audience is.
Sure.
Like, yeah, sure, we're going to support you and you can do all this and blah, blah. And then they serve a trespasser with that exact same person. Through the municipal.
So one of our municipalities doesn't have any lower tier, like they're all regional councillors as well. But one of our a couple more of our others do have separate. But we've been including anyone who wants to listen. Both levels. And we're talking about actually delegating at City Council before we bring the final report to Regional Council. So that's another discussion. We haven't decided that yet, but something we're talking about.
Okay, that concludes our session. Thank you for attending. Thank you to our presenters.